how do the numbers work? You said you buy them for about 150. Are these houses that need to be rehabbed? Are you like burring them, or are they turnkey? And then what type of rent are you getting and something like that?
Yeah. So, our general rule of thumb is we're shooting for a 1% monthly rent
Got it.
to purchase price, is what we're shooting for. And if we can hit that, that's just a really easy rule of thumb. If we can hit that, we know it's going to be a good deal. I mean, we'll look at a couple of um, you know other factors that might take its performance off of that general rule of thumb. But in general, if we're within our criteria and we're getting anywhere close to that 1%, we know it's a pretty good deal, and we're going to be interested in that. So yeah, purchase price of 150. So we're going to initially look at on a property like that, maybe 1,400. We're big fans of Section 8. Our county does a great job with Section 8 renters. And so we have a great relationship with some of the county administrators. And again, my mom has learned how to work with them over the years to get really great tenants. And Section 8 tenants, they'll stay forever. Sometimes they require a little, working with Section 8 tenants requires sometimes setting expectations with those tenants requires more communication than non-Section 8 tenants. But again, something that my mom has done for over, uh, almost 20 years now. So she's really great at it. She knows how to find good tenants. They stay forever. And really Section 8 is paying above market rate typically. So that first year we'll get just about market rate, and we're able to raise the rents that the city is paying. And when something happens like COVID, for example, you're still getting 90% of that monthly rent is still coming from the government, and they're going to pay every month. So we love Section 8. We do a lot of that. And in terms of like the rehab that happens on these properties, typically what we're looking for is something that is not requiring a major rehab. So we're usually putting about, I'd say, less than 10%, much less than about 5% of the purchase price into the property to get it rent ready. Most of the time that's windows. And again, because we have very specific kind of stock that we're buying, it's always the same type of repairs that we know we need to make to get it up to code. So usually it's egress windows for us, and depending on whether the electrical's been built out or not, and there's usually like a bathroom fan that we need to put in there. So it's the same things that we're looking for every time. We know the exact things within that criteria that we're probably going to get hit on, that we need to get up to code. So it's pretty easy to do the estimates for us on what it's going to take. Windows are usually the biggest thing. We just actually have one under contract right now where we're going to do a bigger renovation, something between 20 and 30% of the purchase price we'll put into a renovation. So that's the first time we're doing something a little bit bigger.
Yeah, that's great. And I've noticed the same thing about the rents. It's counterintuitive, I think, for a lot of people who don't or aren't familiar with Section 8, that you would get more rent for a voucher. But in the south suburbs of Chicago, it's the exact same thing for the properties I have there. And I think it kind of makes sense. I mean, you're taking on a little bit more risk. You get your rent, or I'm sorry, you get your rent payments from HUD or from the housing authority, but you're taking a little more risk with the tenant. A lot of times they don't necessarily qualify for standard rentals. So I think it does make sense, and I think it's a great option too for people who are listening. If you're kind of scared of Section 8, I've done it for a long time. Ian's done it. It can really work out well. There's some really great Section 8 tenants. It's not people who are just going to destroy your place, or you think kind of rough areas or whatever. There's actually, it can be a good investment option.
Yeah,
One thing,
and
I'm sorry.
I want to just on Section 8 tenants, something that I think we do really well. That there definitely are challenges associated with working with Section 8 tenants sometimes, and the way that we've been able to overcome those or mitigate that is, the biggest thing I think you're dealing with a lot of times is a lot of times Section 8 tenants it's their first time living in a single family home. So they've maybe lived in an apartment for a long time, or actually a lot of the ones that we work with are recent immigrants. And so just living in the United States is a new thing. So there's just a ton of new experiences and just expectations that need to be set. And so a lot of that happens up front, and more, a lot of explicit communication on topics that otherwise, maybe for a non-Section 8 tenant, you don't need to communicate that. There's kind of like an implicit understanding. And so being overly communicative with a lot of times with Section 8 tenants, we found has really been helpful, and has led to some really great relationships with some long-term tenants.